I'm here to share my stories and events that I've seen in my 15 years of driving a truck. Right now, I live in the US and work here, but for the most part of my life, I've lived in Europe and driven trucks there. I started out driving when I was 18 upon finishing high school, and I had all these big plans about college and a well-paying career, and some of you have followed in the same steps as me. Being a high school graduate with about $1,000 in my pocket, college just was no option at that moment. And so I took up truck driving and planned to make some money for college and then get a doctorate. But that all fell in the water because after a year I've fallen in love with this job and there was nothing that I would rather be doing. An opportunity fell in my lap to go to the US to work there, so I did. I've seen some crazy shit in Europe, and I'll tell you those encounters later on, but this particular story happened about a year or two ago. It was summer and it was really hot all around the globe, but let me tell you, nothing can run against Arizona when it comes to heat. It was really hot. It was hot like I imagined Devil's butthole to be hot. But despite the heat, I've always liked driving through Arizona. The lone roads and endless deserts just keep me at peace all the time. I was driving all day on Route 85 after a long pause earlier this morning. The sun had just started to set and the sky was absolutely beautiful. I opened my window and cruised in my truck. If any of you are interested, I drive a Kenworth W900 and it's a beautiful rig. So I was just cruising along, listening to the sounds of the nature, and I was on a long stretch of straight road cutting through the desert. Now, I can say that I'm tough and whatnot, but there is nothing natural about driving in the middle of the night through a desert with no one else in the area for miles. It is creepy, and it just always will be. And my mind started to flood with all sorts of thoughts about my life, about my failed love, and about death, and death seemed really friendly in the night. It was closing to midnight when I saw something in the distance, about a mile out. I saw red headlights and assumed people in the area needed help because their car had broke down or something. I decided I would stop to help since I needed some company and people to talk to anyway. Not all of us are murdering alcoholics, folks. As I was nearing the car, I saw it was an older model of some brand that I didn't recognize in the dark. The color was green and kind of beautiful too. There was a couple besides the car just calling for help and waving their arms, and as I stepped out of the rig it got real cold all of a sudden. I was spooked by this, but just wrote it off. Approaching the couple, I saw something was off. Their clothes were really old, like 50s old. There was this strange smell too, like decaying meat or something like that. But nonetheless, I came up to them and asked what was wrong. The man, tall and dark, explained to me that their engine started smoking and the car just stopped working. As he explained that, I opened the hood and a lot of smoke just blasted my face. Waving it off, I started fiddling with the engine, and just as I found the problem with it, something hit me over the head so hard that I fell unconscious in an instant. As I came to myself, I realized through my blurry eyes that I was in the sleeper of my truck. I tried to move, but I was tied up. The couple was now just standing in front of me and looking at me. I couldn't even get a word out before those bastards took up a knife and started to cut my arm up. They were smiling while they were doing it too, and they looked like they had the time of their life. Blood was going everywhere, and I felt myself drifting off again, and as I was about to go, I heard a horn blast through the night, and it was closing in. My captors swiftly turned around, and I looked through the window, and then they just faded away. I'm not joking too, they just kind of puffed up like a cloud of some sort of smoke. Everything was blurry, but I saw a bearded trucker I assumed come in and untie me, and then I lost my consciousness. Waking up in the hospital bed, I saw my arm in bandages and the man that saved me by the bed. His name is Adam, and to this very day we're actually good friends. Now, about the couple, I don't know anything. There was no car at the scene, no traces of anyone besides me, and I took it upon myself to look into this and found this old legend about a couple that died on the 85 back in the 50s. It's said that they call for help all night now, beside their green car. I don't know if there's any truth to it or what, but all I know is that I'm glad that Adam came to save me. So, for my second story, let's go 3 years back now. I was in Oregon, just hauling a load. Not too exciting, but I was enjoying the views in this beautiful state. Lots of mountains, forests, and lakes. Truly amazing for someone who loves nature. People just don't respect nature, and most of the time, that kind of attitude will get you killed. There are a lot of things hiding in the woods and in nature altogether, and I'm not talking bears and otters. I'm talking demons, spirits, witches, and so on. Anyway, back to this one. So I was driving up this mountain road, and again I was the only one on it. It was dark, like really dark, and there were no lampposts or anything, and the closest town was about 200 miles away. In other words, I was truly alone, and to be honest, I was spooked. I know darkness is nothing to be messed with, and it may seem funny, but we all should be scared of the dark to some extent. Trust me, I know. But to soothe my soul, I turned up the radio with some country music playing. Driving through the night was beautiful, and I always like to take the night jobs just to look at the sky and whatnot. I don't know what it is, but the night sky just soothes me, and the cold and the distant stars remind me of my home in Europe, just far, far away, and my memory of it is fading, but one day I'll get back there. Sorry, I'm getting carried away again. You'll find that I do that often. Music helped though, but I needed to take a leak badly. I was holding it just until I got to this mountain, but I couldn't hold it anymore. I pulled over on a straight, turned on my hazards and hopped out, and it was a bit chilly outside, so I took my jacket. Now that I think about it, that jacket, it actually might have saved my life. My jacket was actually a logger's jacket, as you would call it, if you know what I mean. So, putting the jacket on, I decided I would venture off into the start of the woods behind the truck and answer the calling of the wilderness there. I had no lamp or battery, so I was relying on the moon for light. I unzipped my pants and was relieved instantly. I was done quickly too, and I was turning around to go back to my truck and continue my journey, and I heard something weird. Someone was chopping trees in the middle of the night in the mountain, and it was unmistakable. It was really close too. The chopping sounds were loud and hard, and someone was swinging that axe powerfully. Safe to say that this was weird, and in retrospect, what I did was really stupid. Take some advice from me, folks. If your gut tells you to turn around and go, then you should always do that. Always trust your survival instincts. Don't do what I did. But me being the good guy that I am, I decided to see if someone needed help. I started to walk towards the sound, which took me even deeper into the woods, and I could barely see, but somehow I was getting closer to the sound. In the distance, I could see a big burly man swinging an axe. He was huge too, a proper logger, but he was illuminated somehow, like there was a spotlight that followed him everywhere. I got closer, and with it, this weird smell like a skunk followed me around. I called out to him, and he stopped chopping in an instant. And now he was facing with his back to me, so when he turned around and faced me, I shat my pants. The logger had just cuts on him, and I mean everywhere. There were bandages and cloths just all over him, coloured with deep red blood. He was disfigured roughly too, like someone threw him into the wood chipper or something. And I knew right then and there that I was in over my head and that this was a huge mistake. He turned around, and he was an angry dude too. He just stood there menacingly and swayed his axe in his hand, and he started to growl like a mad hound. And with that stench, it got stronger too. And if I wasn't so scared, I would have been throwing up. The fight or flight instinct came upon me though, and I fled. I ran like crazy rabbit through the dark, and he was following me the whole time. I ran for about 2 minutes, and he was behind me all the time. For a huge man that I think now was some sort of demon or some sorts, man, was he fast. I could hear his growling on the back of my neck all the time too, and that smell, it just wouldn't go away. I was hoping that I was running in the direction of my truck, and when I saw the hazards blinking in the distance, it was like a beacon of hope and life. I quickly got to it, and luckily for me, I left it unlocked too. I got in and locked myself in whilst breathing like a bull. I could see the logger running at the truck from the distance as I was turning on my truck too, and somehow I turned it on, and just as I was about to get the fuck up on out of there, that crazy bastard ran his head straight through my window and broke it. I hit that gas pedal with all my strength, skidding out of there, and I could see him running beside the truck, driving his axe into the trailer, but I was out at that point. After about a few miles, my scared ass stopped by the side of the road to just try and calm myself down. Walking around my truck, I saw the damage and the holes made by the axe all around. I don't know if I imagined this or not, but I could swear that the smell came back, so I just got in my rig and I got the hell out of there. I still don't know how I managed to escape there and how I didn't trip and fall, and I mentioned how the jacket might have saved my life because, you see, he waited there and growled at me, and if he attacked me right away, I would have been a goner. And the only hunch that I have for this behavior is that maybe he thought that I was a logger too. So, for my third story, I want to tell you guys something that happened to me in Europe. Now, Europe is a really old continent. People have been living there for a long time, inhabiting these just uneven terrains. But I think that before people, something else may have lived there. I do believe monsters exist because I've seen some things, but let me tell you, nothing that I've seen in the US can match Europe. Things in the US seem watered down a bit, which is a good thing in this case. So, it was a cold December, I remember, but the days were short and the nights were dark, darker than usual in fact. I was driving on Balkans, which is where I'm originally from, and we were not used to really cold winters there, so I was freezing, even though to some of you that would be nothing, I'm sure. I was driving an MAN truck, and it was really warm inside, so I was enjoying myself driving on winding roads and through small towns, and driving the entire day. I got tired and hungry, so when I saw a gas station that I knew had some good food, I just had to stop. It was about 8 p.m. when I pulled in, and it was really dark. On Balkans in the winter time, it usually gets dark around 4 p.m., so we were deep into it right now. On Balkans in the winter time, it usually gets dark around 4 p.m., so we were deep into the night now. I parked in the back and took my jacket, and I got out. It was actually the same jacket from the previous story, and it was really cold, and I get cold just thinking about it, in fact. As I was walking to the gas station, I glanced across the street to see some shape in the darkness. I couldn't really make out the shape because it was so dark there, but it looked like a human, I think. I thought to myself that was a bit weird, but I just wrote it off as someone taking a leak. I walked in, and the warmth of the station just gave me a huge warm hug as I greeted the cashier there. He was an older man in his 50s, but he still looked strong and big. I slowly walked over to the sandwich shop, just browsing through the shelves and picking some things up like sunflower seeds, a pack of cigars and some energy drinks, and I got my sandwich, sat down and ate it. It felt good, but one thing that I didn't realize was that the sandwich had some sort of cheese in it, and I was lactose intolerant, so when my stomach rumbled like an engine, I hurried to the bathroom to relieve myself. I was in there for about 20 minutes because it was really warm in there and it was really clean, which was a miracle for a gas station. I got up and sighed, knowing that I would have to stop a few more times because I would definitely have to visit the bathroom again. Making my way out of the bathroom, though, the gas station just felt weird. But there were no sounds of the radio that the cashier was listening to when I got in. And at that moment, I knew something was wrong. I could just feel it in my gut, in fact. I stood there for a minute though before I just decided to get the hell out of the place, and I've already paid for everything, so I thought that I would just walk out. I went to the front to say goodbye to the cashier, but he was nowhere to be found. I looked around the store, but he was nowhere. I decided that I would just go, but then, by accident, I took a look at the mirror that they have over the cashier where they can spot you, if you know what I mean, and what I saw made me scared for the third time in my life. The cashier was there all right, but so was this man on top of his neck. I remained silent as I then began to notice some slurping sounds, and they intensified. Blood was just everywhere on the floor, and the cashier looked pale, drained out. The thing on top of him was wearing a black hood with some jeans, and I couldn't see much of his face because his blood was just everywhere, and he was facing down on the man's neck. I realized there, as I stood silent and frozen in place, that this thing was actually drinking this man's blood. Coming back to my senses, though, I realized that I needed to move or I was about to die. As I made the first step, my shoe with a rubber sole made that squeaky sound. The sound filled the place as this thing snapped its head in my direction in an unnatural speed, and I knew that I'd messed up. I saw in the mirror as it started to rise and the hood started to appear from beneath the counter. Behind the food was a pale bald face. When it fully revealed itself, I just felt evil. I was on the verge of crying, in fact, from the fear as it scared me with its eyes and really sharp teeth. I felt like an animal, like a prey, like a sheep just waiting to be slain and eaten by a wolf. But I snapped out of it, and the thing started to growl, showing off the yellow teeth it had. In a split second, I started to run for my truck, and I hear this guy following behind me as the door busted open. But somehow I made it to the truck alive and circled the building. As I circled around the building on the other side, I saw this guy just stood there, looking at my eyes while I sped off. And I'll never forget that night. Obviously, I called the police and explained to them what happened, and that was pretty much the end of it. I've never seen anything like that again, because shortly after that I actually moved to the US, and this was one of the reasons for my move. I believe that what I saw was either a vampire or just some sort of messed up individual trying to be a vampire. And I guess that all I can say is that when you're in Europe, be careful, because it may look tame on the outside, but trust me, this place has a dark past and there are dark things that walk around in it. Anyway, I'll end it here for now, but all I can say is that truck driving is not the profession that I thought it would be.